Welcome back. Now, mining experts believe that illegal mining is a crisis and that it can be solved by implementing artisanal mining policies for small-scale mining in South Africa. Now, this as hundreds of illegal gold miners are still underground at Shaft 11 in Stilfontein in the Northwest Province. Artisanal and small-scale mining in South Africa is explicitly banned, as the current regulations actually outlaw any activities that take place without a permit, and that includes both invasive and merely informal mining. Now, analysts say that more than 70 billion rand per annum of national revenue is being lost due to illegal mining in the country's gold sector alone. So to help us discuss this matter and take it further, we're joined virtually by Professor of Environmental and Sustainability Law at the University of the Witwatersrand, Professor Tracy-Lynn Field, and Secretary General of the National Association of Artisanal Miners, Randall Oosthuizen. Randall, Professor Field, thanks to both of you for joining us this morning, and welcome to Morning Live. But Professor, perhaps we can just start by looking at artisanal and small-scale mining and, of course, what the legislation says in this regard.
So the information was correct. The only mining that's permitted in South Africa is so-called large-scale mining, and then mining that can take place under the authority of a mining permit, which is not really small-scale or artisanal mining at all. There is a policy from 2022, artisanal and small-scale mining policy, but that policy only applies really to surface artisanal mining, and it doesn't deal with the underground mining that you see in the gold sector.
Randall, to bring you into the conversation, why would you say it's important to recognize the concept of artisanal and small-scale mining in South Africa?
Yes, thanks. Good morning once again, Sakina, and the viewers. It is important because now you see what is happening now currently in the Northwest is because the industry, the sector is not formalized. What we have done is we have formalized the sector, like a prof has rightfully said that we have done, there was the draft implementations, that was the draft that was done in 2022, but up to now, there's no implementation up to now as we are speaking. So I think once the industry is formalized, we wouldn't be having these problems that we're having now in the Northwest in Stilfontein.
Professor Field, do you think that formalizing this sector could actually put an end to illegal mining or the Zama phenomenon that we're seeing at the moment, given the current policy framework and what is envisaged for South Africa?
I think it's important to understand what the problem is. The problem is that you have a gold mining industry that's essentially dying on the Witwatersrand of more than a century's worth of mining. You have a mine void with thousands of tunnels. You have mine residues, and there's still gold, remnants of gold in that resource. You have a situation of local, national, and regional structural poverty, and you have a market that wants this gold. So what do you do in this situation? How are you going to control or govern, or let alone benefit from that as a state? So the solution that we're seeing is that we're going to stamp the authority of the state. And, you know, that's not necessarily, the rule of law is a constitutional value, and there needs to be some sort of regulation and governance. But how are you going to do that? Who is going to monitor, enforce, and control this illegality for years and years and years to come? And who's going to pay for it? So, I mean, we need to kind of radically accept what the situation is. At the moment, to be an artisanal miner, there's only an option to be an illegal artisanal miner. There is nothing in the law that allows that. So I agree that some kind of formalization is really necessary, and we need a new leadership, the kind of leadership we've seen in the electricity sector, to really take this forward and build some social consensus around what is possible, given that it is also quite dangerous to go down into these shafts.
Randall, as far as you know, just how big is the scope of artisanal mining in South Africa? Because if I remember correctly, I think it was Benchmarks Foundation back in 2018 or so, they were saying that in Gauteng alone at that time, there were about 30,000 Zamazamas, illegal miners operating in Gauteng, not too sure about the rest of the country at that point. So how big do you think this issue is of small-scale or illegal mining in South Africa at the moment?
Sakina, the industry is very big. Currently, on the ground, as you are speaking as now, we have been situated in about 5 provinces where we have our constituencies. There's more than 2 million people, unemployed people, that can be incorporated into the sector, whereby we know that in South Africa we have a huge crisis, a triple threat crisis, of which the biggest one is the unemployment and poverty. And then also the one thing that we should consider and look at, Sakina, is that in the sector itself, the government itself is losing a lot of billions of rand annually, each and every year, because of illicit money going out of the country that is not being accounted for. So even with that money, with the issues of service deliveries problems that we are having in South Africa, that is money that can be spent on the community, that revenues that can be spent in the communities to better the society, the communities that we are living in, Sakina.
So, Randall.
So, yeah, it is a huge contribution in the GDP of South Africa.
So some experts are saying that what is currently happening with the illegal mining activity, they say it's as much as 90 times more dangerous than your larger formal operations because of its unregulated status. Do you agree with that? And if you can, just share with us, exactly how this illegal mining actually is done, if you are able to share with us.
Sakina, I think we first need to identify this. You see, there is your Zamazamas, which is a criminal element, and you have your artisanal mining. What is your so-called Zamazamas? As NAMA, we want to make it, we boldly want to state that we are de-associating ourselves from any criminal element. Where there's criminal elements, the law must take its course. Each and everyone must come to the party, your home affairs, your immigrations, your SAPS, your SANDEF. But now, in the formalization, on the other end of your artisanal miners are people that are using rudimentary tools. Is people that use a perk and a fortune. When you go to the fields, you only go with a perk and a fortune. You don't need other things. You don't need guns. You don't need other things for protection, because you are going there for work, to supply for your family or for your livelihood. So it is important to know that what is the difference between the Zamazama and artisanal miners. Yeah, there's a big difference there, Sakina.
And I'm glad you raised that because just in terms of the implications here, where there is, of course, talk of shutting down on illegal mining, which speaks to the Zamazamas in particular, but there does seem to be the blurring of the lines, Professor Field, when it comes to artisanal mining and the illegal mining activity that's taking place. You did start off by explaining to us about, surface and those operating underground in terms of how those operations differ in one aspect. But let's talk about that in terms of, is there a clear understanding and also the implications of shutting down illegal mining? Will that affect artisanal mining in any way?
Okay, so just to be clear, artisanal mining is illegal, but we need to distinguish between crimes. So there's a narrative of criminality, which is very problematic because it's dehumanizing. So there are crimes like murder and rape and robbery and tax evasion and money laundering that are, there's a lot of moral disapproval that attaches to those. The reason that artisanal mining is illegal is because of a provision in the Mineral and Petroleum Resources Development Act. It's a statutory offense. So any kind of artisanal mining is currently illegal. We have a policy that has not been translated into the law, into the legislation. So this is where we need action from the Department of Mineral Resources to legalize some kind of artisanal mining, so that this livelihood strategy, which applies to tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, we're actually not sure, people can pursue this livelihood. And it's not just men going underground; it's women who are crushing the stone. So it's a whole economy. So we need to start with looking at that policy again and making sure that it's operationalized in that act.
And listening to Randall, Randall seems to believe that what they are doing is legal, Prof. And, so let's just bring that together. Randall, you believe that what you are doing is legal.
Sakina, let me give you a scenario, Sakina. In Kimberley, in 2018, we have one of our cooperatives, which is Batupili Cooperative in the Northern Cape. The government, DMR, by then it was DMR. It was not DMRE yet. They have legalized artisanal mining in Kimberley, whereby our guys from Batupili, they are busy digging legally. So when you look at your 1997 white paper, your 1998, then you will also see that our constitution and also our bills, they actually cater for this. When you go now even to the latest draft policy that Professor is talking about, the latest one of 2022 now, is the one now that is keeping us hostage not to have implemented on other areas. But I think it's actually a contradiction when we say it is not legal, because then why is the guys in Kimberley in the Northern Cape, are they busy digging there and illegally? So they got permits from that. By then it was Deputy Minister, I think, Mildred Oliphant.
Prof, important question that Randall is posing there, because there was, of course, talk about getting people to form cooperatives. If I'm not mistaken, there was even, some sort of pilot project that was in the Limpopo and Mpumalanga provinces with regard to looking at artisanal mining and formalizing that.
So, I mean, the exact legal authority that is allowing that mining to happen, we need to see what is the case. But if you look at the black letter law, if you look at what is actually on the books, the law is not in line with what is happening on the ground and with the feeling on the ground that this should be formalized, and that the policy has not been operationalized. And that's the level where we need action from the government, so that there's no uncertainty. And you can see from the discussion that, the moral feeling of the community is that this should be formalized, because it's a livelihood strategy, and it's an entrenched livelihood strategy. But there's also an entrenched illicit gold mining industry. And just yesterday, the World Gold Council published a report on the illicit gold mining industry, and miners, artisanal miners, whether artisanal miners or zamazamas, have no choice. Who do they sell their gold to? Because it's not formalized. So that report was speaking about the fact that 20% of the world's gold supply comes from illicit gold mining. And they've actually painted that as a threat to international security and proposed a number of measures that governments can take to formalize artisanal miners into legal supply chains so that they're not exploited.
So clearly there's a lot of discussion that still needs to happen here, Prof. As you say, what is contained on paper is very different from what is actually happening on the ground. But Randall, we just have less than a minute, in fact. You know, what would you like to see in terms of the future of artisanal and small-scale mining in South Africa? Just very briefly.
Sakina, as a National Association of Artisanal Miners, we are saying we are calling upon the government once again because there was a policy that was drafted in 2022. It was adopted. We need the implementation. Last year, there was, I think it was in late February, government, the DMRE department did try to open invitations for proposals, the project that you are talking about. But, you know, there was so much red tape around it that most of these artisanal miners, they couldn't even meet those criteria around that red tape. What we are calling upon is for the DMRE to come back so that we can resolve this as soon as possible because as you can see, Sakina, it has become a major factor now that is affecting the lives even of the ordinary South Africans on the ground now, Sakina.
Indeed. And thanks so much for your time. This is obviously a conversation that needs to be expanded. Randall Oosthuizen is the Secretary General of the National Association of Artisanal Miners, and Professor Tracy-Lynn Field is Professor of Environmental and Sustainability Law at the University of the Witwatersrand.